Hey Mary, how are you? I just finished watching your video. Sorry that it's taken me almost a week to get all of these back. I accidentally had everything due in every class last weekend, and so it's taking me forever to get through it all. But overall, you did a really great job. Nonverbals were great. I thought your communication style was good. You didn't spend too much time looking at your notes. You're making good eye contact. Everything seemed to flow well. The one thing that definitely was missing was kind of that review of your informed consent and your professional disclosure statement. For the life of me at this moment, I can't remember if I specifically stated that that's something you should do or not, but that's always going to be part of that intake, is for you to go over that. And I believe I could see that she was not actually underage, not a minor, but playing the role of a minor, which is great practice for you. Disclosure is going to be a little bit different for working with a minor. And so if you use her again, what I'm going to ask you to do is go through a disclosure like you would just to get the practice for it. If you don't use her, still go through that professional disclosure and informed consent statement. You can find examples online. But just again to get the practice with the client. So whether or not it's the same client doesn't matter to me, but I just want to see it in the second video that you do. I think because she was mandated, it was excellent that you did that. Took that moment really early on in the beginning to say, I know that you're here and you have to be here, but what are your thoughts on counseling? And so that's really good to do because that does occur with mandated clients. Some may actually see the benefit of being in counseling if they're mandated by the court. Others might sit there and stonewall you for half an hour. So it just, depends on the client. So I think that was really good for you to understand where she was coming from. You did a really good job using open-ended questions to get some of that family history and background. Make sure to watch kind of leading people into a response. Okay, and so by that I mean when you're asking a great open-ended question of tell me more about how this makes you feel, I would say and then kind of what you were doing in the tape was saying, does it make you feel stressed or does it, make you feel this way? So I would suggest either just stopping after you say feel. So how does this make you feel? And just leaving it very generic and yep, that's what we do as counselors. Or you could kind of bring yourself into it a little bit, doing that hypothesizing, right, that we learned about in micro skills and that you can do depending on what your theoretical orientation is. So you could say, wow, because this girl had a rough background, right? You could say, wow, if this were me and I was your age, I remember what I would feel like, and I would feel stressed, I think. Is that what you're feeling? Because that's what I would feel. So you can attribute a feeling to yourself, and then gauge maybe what the client is feeling based off of that. Your goal setting was really good. You did a good job at getting her from a broad goal to a narrow goal. I thought it was great that you brought her dad into the goal setting process, even though it's clear that she's having the physical issues with her mother, and wants to be living with her dad. It was good that you still want to bring him into all of that, because of course that's going to affect a family dynamic in general. And then a good review. You had a very good review at the very end of what your take was on those goals. So you worked them out together, and then I like how you reviewed them at the end and said this, I heard you say this is a goal, and this is a goal, and this is a goal. Now that we set the tone, where do you want to go with this next? The only other thing that just kind of like popped in my mind, and this is just kind of naturally when we are doing a role play, you probably have some awareness of what your fake client's going to be talking about. But my goodness, if this were a real life thing and a teenager were talking to me about being abused to that extent by their mother and was being very flippant about it, and not having really any kind of emotional reaction, just telling the story like it was. So I would wonder what that would feel like for you being in the counselor seat. You maintain demeanor, of course, but people should have an emotional response. And so, yes, she was playing a role and probably wasn't going to start crying, when she's talking about what's potentially a made up story here. But I would call that out as the counselor to say, this is a very traumatic event that you've experienced, but yet it doesn't seem like it's upsetting you. Why is that? what is that reaction? Because I would question why there wasn't an emotional reaction from her, more so than, what was being given. Again, that's if it were a real life situation. We can only do so much in these role plays. But you did do a good job at maintaining your composure and not being like, "Ooh, geez, that was really terrible." And really, in a mandated setting, you may or may not have this information. The courts may or may not have provided it to you already. It just depends. You may have some insight based on a conversation with a dad, prior to meeting with a minor in a counseling setting. So there are a whole host of other things that could come into play. But overall, really good job, really good start to the semester for you. Like I said, video 2, I do want you to review informed consent and disclosure statements just so you get some practice on that, regardless of who the client is. And try out some counseling theories, okay? It'll help you frame, what homework you can assign to a client. Even if you pick one for the next video and say, I'm going to do a little bit more reading on this particular approach. Maybe it's like REBT, or maybe you do like Gestalt and you want to try the empty chair technique. So try something out specifically for the second video. And I'll look forward to talking with you again, okay?